Welcome back to Incorporate, the podcast for business owners presented by the UB School of Management Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, the show where business meets insight and learning meets doing. I'm your host, Susan Steffen, Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, otherwise known as CEL. And with me for all our podcasts is our producer, Jordan Lima, founder of Lemur Studios, where we're recording today. Today, we're shining a light on an incredible resource that many business owners don't even realize they have access to, the University at Buffalo. Joining us are Michael Krupski, Clinical Assistant Professor of Strategy, and Cassie Nguyen, Clinical Assistant Professor of Accounting and Law, both from the University at Buffalo School of Management. They're here to discuss the Projects Clinic, an exciting program that pairs students with businesses to tackle real-world business challenges, from marketing and operations to strategy and financial analysis. But this episode is more than about just student projects. We're also tackling a common myth that universities and academics are out of touch with the real needs of business owners. Michael and Cassie are here to show us just how hands-on, practical, and deeply connected the University at Buffalo is to the Western New York business community, and how faculty and students are helping businesses grow, pivot, and thrive. So welcome, Cassie. Welcome, Michael. So for those of us unfamiliar, what is the Projects Clinic?
So thanks for having us, Susan. The Projects Clinic is an initiative that was started 2 years ago now. I can't believe I'm saying this is the end of the second year of the clinic, by our dean, Anat Thayer. And his idea was, how do we bring real-world projects and real-world experiences to students who may not be able or not have the time to take on a full traditional internship with an organization? So we really think about it as bridging a gap between students having experiential learning opportunities and organizations in and around the Buffalo area getting the opportunity to also get some assistance from student teams within the university. So from a logistical standpoint, the way that it really operates is that the university hires students into the clinic. They're funded by the University of Buffalo School of Management, and then those students are attached to projects within companies in and around the Buffalo area. So companies reach out to us, they say, hey, we have a project, and I'll talk in just a moment about what some of those projects might look like, but we have a project that we might have for a group of students that we would love assistance on. We take a team of our students, embed them into that organization, make the connections, allow them to start working on that project, and then deliver that to the end community partner. I think when we think about the process and how this is so beneficial to students, but also to organizations, is from a student standpoint. If you think about a traditional internship, they generally work with one company for 15 weeks, and they're doing maybe the same thing for that 15-week period of time. Our students within the clinic very often are attached to somewhere between 5 and 6 projects during the course of a single semester with 5 and 6 different organizations that are all different sizes, scopes, scales, types of problems, types of organizational structure, and it gives them a really wide range of experience in a really short period of time. And then, of course, from the company standpoint, at the end of the day, they're not paying for it. So it is what I like to call maybe some free work. But it's work that, again, students that are in all the different facets of management are able to work on. So I'm sure we can talk about student expertise and what they bring to the table as well. But that is really the benefit of the clinic. We see it as a benefit to community partners, but also a real benefit to students as well.
And so obviously you were the founder of the clinic, or from the very beginning, there from the start.
Yes. I make absolutely no claim that I had the idea for the clinic. It really came from our dean, but he called me up. I remember it was one day in August of 2023 that would be, and said, hey, I have this idea, let's get it off the ground. And within, I think, a month, we had hired our first 4 or 5 students into the clinic, kind of found our footing over the course of that semester. And by the next academic year, we now have ramped up to, we hire about 100 students a year into the clinic.
And Cassie, were you involved at the beginning? When did you join in?
I just started joining last fall, so I started helping out with Mike. We basically tag team on supervising the student teams. Most of our student teams are groups of both graduate and undergraduate students, and Mike and I just take on different teams and mentor them and kind of supervise and kind of walk them through any coaching, any mentoring that they need to help them thrive in their projects.
That's amazing.
I'm actually a past client of the projects team, so I've got a lot of insight into this process too. But I can say for now is that thank you, and I can't wait to hear more about all this, because the 3 students that were assigned to me were excellent. How do you vet that, and how do you make sure that they're going to be great for these businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of what Cassie and I work on a regular basis is how do we make sure that we're aligning students to the appropriate projects. That starts with the students that we hire into the clinic. It is a very competitive process, I will say. So we do hire in about 100 students a year, but we exceed about 400 applications every year. So it is incredibly selective from that regard. Many of our students actually have previous work experience. They're coming back for graduate studies, but do have 3 to 4 to 5 years of work experience, some with companies like Deloitte and KPMG. So really great students that we have at the university that we can tap into their skill set. And then once we have those student teams developed, we really look at, on a day-to-day basis, a new project comes in and we say, hey, we have this project. Who does this feel like it best fits? And we look at the expertise of our students because, again, we take students not just in MBAs or in the MBA program. We take students from every school of management graduate and undergraduate program that we have. So we have students that are masters of finance, masters of science accounting. We have MIS students, management information systems. We have MBA students. So we have all of them that all have really wide-ranging experiences, and we try to align that to the best of the client need as possible.
So CEL gets to be involved helping companies learn about this great opportunity and sharing, what great things the Project Clinic can do for them. And I talked to the business owners, and some of them are, I'm not sure about this. And I said, listen, these students, when they do a project for you in January, it's going to be free. When you try to hire them in May or June, it's going to be hundreds of dollars an hour because they are qualified students that are going to go on to do great things. So you might as well take advantage. So what type of businesses typically are participating, and how do they get found? How do you find them?
The business size really can vary from either mom and pop shop with one single owner to really large corporations that have a lot of data and a web back of staff. I think it really depends on the needs. So usually, I'm sure Mike can talk a little bit about what are the components that make up a great project. But when the client come to us with a clear scope of what they want the student to work on, that is usually a great starting point. So it really doesn't matter what is the type of the business or the size. The things that matter the most is that there is a clear scope, and there is also their ability to work with our students and mentor them and coach them throughout the project. Because as like you have any full-time employees or interns, you need that coaching and the investment in the time working with the students.
And so a business doesn't have to be affiliated in any which way with the university in order to use the Projects Clinic, right? So any business can submit a form online. They can go to management.buffalo.edu, right, and submit a form to the Projects Clinic and see if the project obviously meets the scope of what you're looking for. So let's talk a little bit about the type of projects. Like when we talk about something that can be done in 4 or 5 weeks, like what kinds of things would be a fit for this?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of different types of projects, which I think is one of the most exciting things about the students that work in the clinic, again, is they can work on, I'll talk about a very common one, which is data and dashboarding. How do we have this data set, or we have this recurring data set, or maybe what we see a lot of is, hey, we've built systems over time that house data in different places. So we know we have data in this system and data over in this system. How do we bring it all together and make sense of it, right? How do we take these different slices and make something that we can actually take action on? And that is something that our students, I think almost every single team that we have takes on at least one data and dashboarding project throughout the course of the semester, because it's one of our most common asks. But beyond that, we see everything from it. Maybe you can talk to some as well, but we see things that are as small as, one of the things we did this past semester was we have individuals that come into our building and we don't man a front desk. Like we don't have a receptionist that sits at the front. We just kind of are in our offices. People come in. We need a way for people to check in and for us to know that they're there so we can come out and get them. What does that process look like? And our students went through and they actually found online technology that the company to subscribe to, worked through the vetting process of like how much that would cost and how you would implement it, suggested that off to the company, and the company ended up implementing it at the end of that process. So it is, again, any business process, anything that we can relate back to the world of management is really what we think about from a term or from a scope standpoint.
My project was a couple different avenues, a lot in the data side of things, but one of it was taking my services and figuring out how to package it into products, how to productize what I'm doing. And that was really cool. The 3 individuals that were with me, one was undergrad and then 2 were grad students, and they all had data science backgrounds. And we're very different in that way. So it was very helpful to me to have data scientists look at this problem that I've been dealing with for a long time and break it down in a way that makes sense. So they did that, but they also, I told them the types of clients that are good for me, and they scoured local businesses that would be a good fit and more or less made a hit list of who to call. And so I've got a leads list of what would probably be, on their assessment, the best people for me to reach out to. It was a wonderful service.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What other kind of success stories have you guys had? Obviously, Jordan's was a success, but what other ones have you had?
Yeah, so for example, this past semester, I had a client that is a pretty big hospitality management company in Buffalo. And of course, they have a tons of data. And over the years, they've adopted technologies, new software, and things like that. But they've never really had the time to dive back into their history and see, is there anything in our process that has been done manually, takes a lot of time? Is there any automation that can be done? So our student team coming in, and of course, they have very strong analytics background. And what they did is that they developed a Power BI and they walked the clients through from the very beginning. How do you get from raw data until at the very end when you wanted to have that month-end process to be very smooth and very efficient and require the least amount of hours possible? So that was something that really students are really great at, is they can tap into technology, automation, and they can give clients on ideas on what they could do to make the time that the client would have to typically spend a lot less.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I would piggyback off of that. I didn't realize that my answer to this also deals with automation, but I'll give it in the different scope because Cassie spoke about a client that is large, right? Large hospitality, hundreds of employees. Let's take an automation project that we did last semester. That was a company that was the size of one, right? So just a single sole proprietor that owned a firm that essentially dealt in divorce mediation. So their process was mediating divorce, especially when children are involved, and how do we deal with that entire process. And their goal was to keep that process out of the courts as much as possible. And one of the things that this individual was talking to her team about was, hey, I ask all of these questions when we go into mediation, and I take all of these notes, and we do all of these things, and then I have to take all of that and transfer it into a contract, an agreement, essentially. And wow, does that take a lot of my time, just taking all of my notes, putting them into this boilerplate template contract that we have. And with that has a lot of nuance to it, because the things that we realize, just for instance, if there are more than one child in a relationship, then anywhere that a contract references child, well, now it needs to say children, right? Just silly things like that she's like, oh, I have to go back and change all of that. And our team built, essentially, it was a full-scale online app that had all of her questions basically built into a form. And at the end of a process, she would then just type all of these answers into a form, and the form would then auto-generate a contract for her with all of those semantic things updated. So an automation project that took her really pretty laborious process of how do I deal with contract creation and make it automated. And then the thing that they didn't even ask for, but our team went, I think, one step above, which is what was so cool about this project, is they actually built it into a database system. So everything that was generated was saved into a database, could be sent to a client for signature. Once it was signed, it came back, got stored in that database, and it was all ran locally on their machine. So any of that information wasn't subjected to being online in any way. So it was also really safe in that regard as well.
Wow.
So a project that we asked for, I think, this, and they gave us this out of nowhere without us even asking for it. So it was a really cool project.
Sign me up for that for phase 2 of my journey. Because we discussed stuff like that. We were, so I guess 2 questions. One, what is the average time frame of these projects? Because I was under the impression that we were dealing with a truncated scope, but then I don't know if 4 or 5 weeks is sort of an average. But what we were talking about too throughout our time together was that these were options that were available, and we didn't have time to really dig into it. But they were saying, the next crew coming in could inherit the project and maybe proceed with that. With me, estimates and invoicing is a thing where I'm sort of manually, and I put it in my head okay, well, how many variables are there really? But then once you start actually writing them down, there's way more than you think, and you go over it. And what they instilled in me at this point, and what we will hopefully do better in the future, is to walk before I run with it and really just get something down, start the steps, hone it as you go. But I also am looking forward to potentially the next group of people helping me to run with that. And
you've got the walking down and you're ready to run.
Yes, yeah. Because it's a mundane task that I do over and over and over and over again that I don't like that. you would think, it's like, oh, well, why don't you just put it in QuickBooks? It's like, there's so many different things and I can code it in there and I've tried, but then I end up going back to just manually writing it because it flows faster for me. Do you take the time to invest in building something that's going to make it faster down the road, but you're, spending days or weeks before you get to that point? Or do you just barrel through? And I'm on team barrel through right now.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get to that point where there's no more barreling through anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's, we'll jump off task maybe for a second, but as I'm thinking through that, right, that could potentially be a great solution for something like an AI tool, right? So when
Sure.
we talk about AI and building, like we talk about local LLMs, so taking like a ChatGPT infrastructure and bring it into a local machine, upload all of your quotes, right? And then have a conversation. Hey, I want a quote for this. Have an LLM or a ChatGPT type system look at all of your old quotes, say, well, based on what you quoted before, it seems like this should be the price of your project. Just again, throwing out ideas. But
That'd
that's
be
something
remarkable. Yes,
something
yeah.
that a team could potentially look at doing. But those are I think, I'm always taken back by how many solutions we give the problem to students and they come back with something that is not anything that I would have even ever thought of. And it's great. It's amazing. So I think empowering our students is one of the things that we really focus on.
Well, I think it's important for business owners to realize there's a lot of things that they're, like you said, struggling with for years and either don't know where to start to fix it or don't have the time. So they keep doing it the old-fashioned way or the laborious way. And this is providing an opportunity for a business owner to get some help and that's okay, that you're going to need it. And plus what the students are learning is, number one, cutting edge that our business owners may not have been exposed to yet. But number two, they're being led by people not only awesome academic faculty, but you guys have lived it. You've both worked in industry, you both know what's going on. So the students are getting really good direction. And I think that's where our business owners need to understand they don't have to do it all themselves. There are resources like the university that can help out.
It was totally a break from my normal routine to tackle projects that I wouldn't normally do. So even at its very, very, very basic, it was commanding my attention that I would never give to it because I'm too busy doing what I'm doing. But with the team involved, it set up a structure to focus on an issue. So even from my own personal perspective, I allocated the time to tackle a project. Just so happened there were also really qualified, awesome people on the other end, driving the bus. That was great.
And we've been talking so far about the Projects Clinic, but Cassie, I want to pivot for 1 second and talk a little bit about your accounting students. So CEL businesses have been the beneficiary of working with your accounting students for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about what does that mean for the students? What does it mean for the businesses? How's it gone?
Yeah, of course. And Susan, I think you touched base on a really important point earlier is that our faculty in the school management, a lot of us came from industry. So what we bring into the classroom is not just about, the textbook, the knowledge, but what we think are the skills that is really important for our student to be successful later in life. So the project that I actually have been having with CEL for about 3 years now is, I would call it a tax ed project, tax education project. So I came from a background of tax professional. So obviously, aside from getting the taxes right, I learned from my years of industry is that the most important thing that you can do as a tax professional is make sure your client are not surprised by tax obligations or tax opportunity that they miss out on the table. So when I came on to UB, one of my goals is to really instill that in my student is to hone in their communication skill, how to develop a relationship with your client, understanding their needs before you even talk about the tax stuff. So with that, I happened to be on a faculty staff meeting as Susan Seven was on, and she talked about CEL, and that was my first time hearing about what CEL does. And I was like, wow, there are emerging leaders, there are small business owners. And so I reached out to Susan and I asked, do you guys talk about taxes? And she said, no, we haven't. Would you like to do that? So I was like, yes, of course, sign me up. So past forward 3 years now, what I do in every spring semester around end of January, February, when we start thinking about taxes, right, is I come in the downtown Gateway campus, have a session, talk to the business owners about just the nuts and bolts about taxes. And what they really appreciate, and I think I didn't really see it in hindsight, is that a lot of them don't have the ability to get that support anywhere else. A lot of them don't have a CPAs already. So that ability to tap into an additional resource by being a part of CEL was something that I did not realize that was so helpful for a lot of the emerging entrepreneurs that we had. So then after that, I had the session. I have everybody signed up for my tax ed program. So usually every year I had about 20 business owners that signed up. And what I do is that I set up Zoom meetings one-on-one with my group of students. I'm always in those meetings. I'm making sure the students are saying the right thing. But it was so helpful for us to learn how to communicate, how to educate tax, how to break down the jargons and make into something really simple for people to understand. And on the other hand, I see the entrepreneurs. My goal is by the end of that 30-minute Zoom session, the entrepreneurs walk out and feel like, okay, I got it. I felt like I'm doing the right thing for taxes, right? It's one of those things where you want to do the least amount of work, but you want to feel good about doing it. You don't want it to get into trouble later. So that is something exactly what you said, Susan, is that we came from industry. We bring our experience and we create projects. And we're super grateful to have CL as a partner in creating these collaborations.
I think it's been amazing for our business owners because coming into our Emerging Entrepreneurs program, which are business owners just starting out, they're under 2 years in business, and some of them are still trying to figure out if they should be a DBA, an LLC, whatever it is. And tax questions always come up. Now, my background's finance, not taxes. So I always say from the beginning, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But that's where having the students come in and say, okay, here are the basics for what you're doing, what fits, just basics of document preparation. What do you have to save for how long? What are you doing? Some of that can be game changing, for when you're just starting out. So that collaboration has been one example outside the Projects Clinic that has been wonderful for our students. And we're very fortunate for many of the classes within the UB School of Management, they rely on CEL or come and call us for some help. And we were able to place our businesses into some of those classrooms, whether it's doing a talent management project with a group of students, whether it's doing some things for the consulting class. But I think that's been a really, really great opportunity both for our business owners as well as our students. And selfishly, for all those business owners later, those students are going to be clients at some point too if they're sticking around the area. So it's a great win-win for everyone. So what would you guys say? There's a perception, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but to hit it directly, that, you guys are in an ivory tower and that academia maybe doesn't get what's going on in the business world. How does this project maybe help bridge that gap? And how would you answer that allegation?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, so many of the students that work in the clinic are individuals that have experience, right? So they're individuals that have worked for a couple of years, they come back to academia, want to finish their degrees. So they're the ones bringing really hands-on experience into the mix. But I would say that we do as well, right? So Cassie and myself, both from industry, many of our clinical professors from industry. I'm still regularly involved in industry, so I own a consulting firm that does digital marketing and social media marketing and websites and things like that, which I've done for the last 7 or 8 years now. Really, when I came to academia, I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that I do something that keeps me connected to what the day-to-day experiences are, especially in the world of social media, right? When I took this job at UB in 2016, TikTok wasn't a thing, right? And if I had put that away and said, well, it's not something I'm going to focus on, I'm just going to focus on academia, then I wouldn't be able to stand up in front of a classroom to educate students on strategies on how to create engaging content on those platforms. So I think staying involved is something that I feel really strong about in order to feel like I have the ability to give that experience to our students. That's not just from the textbook side of things, but also from the real world. And then 2 years ago, I don't know how it, well, I know how it happened, but I also started a food truck. So I also have another business that does that. So, it's, I think, kind of funny when I see students once in a while that had me in a classroom and then they walk up and they see me working in a food truck. And they're like, what is happening? But that is, again, my wife and I own a small business. We are people that live it every single day. And I think that that's how we also stay really connected to that process.
Did you have the students work on the food truck project?
Let me tell you, I would love to submit myself. I feel like it's a little bit of a conflict of interest, so I have not done that. But wow, again, as a small business owner from that perspective, there are so many things that I could think of if I could just have, right? I was just actually saying on my drive in today, I was like, man, if I could just have a team of students break down my costing of everything that I produce so I know to the penny exactly what everything costs me. Because I have good ideas, but I'm not exactly sure. I would love that validation. And I just don't have, to your point, right? I just don't have a day to sit down and just do that, right? We're busy doing the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. I think that is the basis for what is such a great project. The overall kind of expression that I always use is, if you're someone like me that starts each day with like a Post-it note of the things that you need to do, you create a to-do list, and throughout the day you cross it off. And at the end of each day, you're like, oh, didn't get to that project again. Let me move it to my next Post-it note. If you have that project that's been on Post-it note after Post-it note after Post-it note, submit that, right? That's a great thing that our students could potentially take that off your shoulders and work on.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, because somebody who moves them forward.
To revisit your ivory tower talk about the university, I feel like this is the university actually meeting business owners where they're at. They need help, and you're able to provide it. So that's wonderful. There is always, though, is there a catch? What is the university getting out of this? Like, what is the driving force? I mean, there's students getting trained. That's wonderful for the students. The university is paying for it. There's got to be some data involved or anything like that. So how does that all fall back on the university side?
Yeah, and I would say, so one thing I do want to definitely make sure that I approach very clearly is that any data that we capture from an organization retains the property of the organization. We don't retain that. We don't do anything with it unless we have explicit permission, right, from an organization to use that for research purposes or anything like that. But I really think when we think about, what's in it for UB, absolutely, it's an investment. It's an investment in our students. We see it, I think, as a recruiting tool for students, right? So when we go and talk to prospective students and we're talking about, well, what makes UB different? The Project Clinic is one of those things, right? Get hands-on experiential learning and work for multiple different companies in a short-term period of time while getting paid, I think, is something that, again, becomes a great recruiting tool. At the end of the day, it also becomes a great tool to talk with individuals that maybe want to make a gift to the school, and they want to say, I want to support the school. Where can that gift go, and how do I know that it's making an impact? Well, now we easily can point to something and say, hey, for an amount of money, you can support a student throughout the entire clinic. And I think that becomes just a great way, again, to forge relationships for individuals that want to get involved in that way.
So once the process is over, and this is exactly where I am right now, so I'll get the info straight from the source. What is the best practice for the business to do to say thank you to the students? Because I feel a great amount of gratitude for what they've done. And I was mulling in my mind, like, oh, what should I do? And they were saying, well, we're going to be heading out pretty soon because we're going back to whatever state we're from or where we're from. And, they're here for school. So they're graduating. They're going to be moving on to go back home, wherever it is. What's the best thing to do? I mean, should you, if you find value from it, pay the students in some capacity? Is there have a lunch for them? Like, what do you recommend, or what do people do?
I guess the other side of the equation that I forgot to mention earlier was the existence of our CRC, Career Resource Center. So aside from connection with CEL directly, the Career Resource Center has a lot of direct connection with existing employers of our school management already. So a lot of the projects that come in our pipeline actually come from them as well. So we talk with them on, a very frequent basis, and making sure that the company partner that we are doing the project with fully understand where's the cut between Project Clinic and where's the cut between an internship or a volunteer assignment or something like that. So I think it's the part of educating the community partners to know about different types of engagement that they can do with UB. If Project Clinic makes sense for a 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks period of time, that makes sense, great. But if you happen to really like the student and you want to bring the student in-house to develop further on other projects that you have, there's an internship, there's a full-time job and things like that. So what we always do is that at the end, when our partner is really interested in developing the relationship further, we connect them with the CRC, and then they take care from there on to continue their engagement.
Well, and I think too, even if that's not in the cards, I mean, the students are gaining this work experience. I'm sure a good reference would be much appreciated, right?
We definitely discussed that. And I told them, always counting me for that, 100%.
For a lot of our students, they're building out their LinkedIn profiles and portfolios, right? Even recommendations on LinkedIn that you've worked with them in the past, I think goes a long way. But to the point of, how do we say thank you? I think the thank you is really the time that you put in, right? So the best projects that we have, hands down, are ones where the business owner becomes really engaged in it, right? And that's one of the things that I think we've done a much better job of in the last year of when we initially speak with business owners in saying the idea of the Project Clinic is not that you just take this idea and dump it on our students and say, figure it out, and I'll talk to you in 4 weeks, right? The best engagements that we have are the ones that are available, willing to share information, willing to talk through maybe why a solution's not a great solution, or maybe here's why a solution is a great solution. We had a student team this past semester that developed a solution for an organization that on paper looked phenomenal. It looked great. Even I looked at it. I said, I think this makes a lot of sense, and went back to the client that we were working with, and they said, no, this is totally not what we're looking for because you didn't consider A, B, C, and D about our business process. And once the students then kind of framed that understanding of like, okay, we came up with a solution that in our minds works, but doesn't work within the context of this organization. That, I think, for that team of students was the biggest aha moment they had all semester long. That something that might seem like a good idea on paper might not work for a specific organization because of all of these other things that you have to consider when they think about how they run their business. So I think really the gratitude comes from just the involvement over the period of time in the engagement.
I was very candid and very open with the students. And I even, part of my question before is like, what's in on the backside? And you clarified like the data stays where it stays. But I sent a lot of like pricing data and a lot of information, and I anonymized it to the best of my ability, quickly scanning and deleting every name out of it. But that's best practice. But it's also good to hear that the data's safe and it's going to a fine place. And I was happy to share it with them, to be honest with you, because I needed someone else to look at it to get another set of eyes on it and to get a fresh perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, sometimes one of the things we deal with at CEL, because we are part of the university, right, we can bring obviously the best of both, right? So we can bring in some real world experts that are in industry. We can bring in our faculty partners. We can bring in the latest research. But there are some business owners, when we talk to them, are a little bit intimidated by the fact that we're part of UB. How do you deal with that? In this case, when, maybe you're a small business owner, you're not one of the big partners who typically recruits out of the university or anything. You're just a local company and you didn't go to UB. What do you say to somebody who's a little intimidated by it?
Yeah, I would say reach out is the best thing. And I know that that's maybe difficult to think, but the university is large in scale, right? And we've had this talk of this idea that we sit up in an ivory tower. But at the end of the day, I think myself and Cassie alike are individuals that we come to work every day. We love what we do. And the thing that we probably love the most about our job, I don't know if I don't want to speak for you on this, but is the ability to stay connected with business owners in and around Buffalo. I love conversations with business owners and understanding what their problems are and how we can be of service to them, and how we can assign students. So while the university is massive, you can very quickly distill that down to getting in touch with myself and then connecting to a team of 3 people, right? And there aren't a ton of layers to that. Submitting a form online puts you right into our project queue. And then the next step of that is we assign your project to a team. That team reaches out to you. So it very quickly becomes something that is, again, boiled down to something that is so much smaller and I think a little bit more easier to get in touch with. And the other thing that I would say on that is, if you're not sure, you're like, find yourself saying, I don't know that this is a project that I want to do. Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't even know what the project is, right? We talk about this a lot. I have a problem. I don't know what the solution is. Or reach out to either of us, because what we often do is have a meeting with a community partner that is before we even assign something to a team. They just come to us and say, I think this might be a project, but I'm not sure. Can you chat with me through it? Here's my idea. And very often, I think through that process, we look at it or we talk to them and say, it's a great project. Let's get it submitted. Let's get you into the queue. Let's get a team of students. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we also say, oh, this is big. This is a full semester internship and let's direct you to the CRC. Or this is something that, wouldn't you love a team of or 5 teams of students that are all taking this very specific class to work on this? Hey, this can become a full semester project in one of our classes. Let's connect you to the appropriate person there. I think the great thing about the School of Management is that we're so close-knit and tight that as long as you bounce to one of us and we have a conversation, we're able to, usually in one conversation, get you to the right place. Again, I think that's one of the great connections that we can make as well.
Right. And the business owners have to remember that, yes, they may be trying to get something from the School of Management, but to what we were just talking about with Jordan, they're always also providing something to the School of Management. So even though it may feel like you're asking for a favor, you're actually providing that connection, that experiential learning that we know is important for us for our good product, which is students who are ready to work and do well in industry. It's providing us an opportunity to turn out a great product as well. So
I would have never even thought to interface with data scientists for what I'm doing over here. Our interns are generally people that are doing editing or production, and we've got so much to teach them, and generally their knowledge is quite low. So we are doing so much hand-holding and so much teaching throughout that kind of internship. This was really interesting because it was something that I don't know a lot about, and I could gain so much from the expertise of the students because it's outside of my wheelhouse. So thank you. A bunch of times over, I'll say.
Yeah. And what I would say to that is something so interesting. Let's look at the inverse side of that from our students' perspective. Many of our students that are in the project clinic are international students, maybe coming to the United States for the first time, and to be connected with organizations that they may not know anything about. I distinctly remember we had a team of our students working with Chiavetta's Chicken, local company, right? And it took me a little bit of time to explain, like, okay, this is what like chicken dinner is, right? And they had no idea. They're like, this model of business is not something that they had any idea whatsoever. So we often talk about the idea that from a project standpoint, a lot of what we expect out of a client is just what's that initial help that you can deliver to make sure that our team understands what your business does? And being able to articulate that, I think, is not just a great exercise in educating our students so they can produce a great product for you, but also a good just exercise in like, am I good at articulating exactly what I do in a very short period of time? It's a great exercise for any business owner to go through.
And sometimes remembering that the people who know the least about your business initially are going to come at it with a fresh perspective. And they're going to see things that people have a preconceived notion about what you do and how you do it or how it should be done might just not see it, right? They might see what they think is there instead of asking those, what we call the dumb questions, but the ones that actually will get at something different. So
it's a lot of the benefit that we see when we have a partner come in and they pitch an idea to our student team. We often say, stop talking, right? Don't give us more information. Let this team ask the dumb questions. Let them look at it with a fresh set of eyes without your blinders of what you have on this project. Let them look at it with wide eyes and someone that's never seen it before. And that generally does result in maybe one or two questions that could easily be answered, or this solution wouldn't work because of a very easy solution. But it asks the question. And I think when we think about academia from a high level, at least how I think about it, is, we're really teaching students not only to be excellent in the practical world and developing practical skills, but especially from the academia side, right, learning how to ask the right questions and really probing deeper than just surface level of what might seem like the easy answer to something.
The other point I wanted to add about one big advantage of the Project Clinic is that the students are a mix of both undergraduate and graduate students. So the graduate student, they came from industry with experience of years of working. The undergrad student doesn't have much experience, but they have a lot of fresh ideas. So everybody brings something to the table. They all came from different majors, different programs. So you basically have access to a team of students that will be working you through a short-term project that has a lot to bring, different perspective to bring to the table. So what I would always love to pitch about Project Clinic is that think of it as a consulting project. You can walk away learning something new about your business that you didn't know exists, or you can actually take an actionable item based on what was recommended. So I think that was my another advantage of Project Clinic I want to highlight is the diverse experience of the students.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, this is a remarkable program. Before we get to our final thoughts, though, what's the name of the food truck?
The food truck. So I have to, before I give you the name, I have to take a 30-second step back and tell you how it started.
Okay.
My wife in 2021 was diagnosed with celiac disease. So she unfortunately cannot ingest gluten in any way, shape, or form. And that set off for us a process of learning a lot about that disease and the entire process. I distinctly remember my first thought when we found out that she was diagnosed was, oh, that just means you can't eat pizza as much, right? You can still have like a slice or no, not at all, right? What you learn is that even like cross-contamination, they say 1/64th of a teaspoon of flour is enough to set off a reaction of someone that has gluten or that has celiac disease. So we learned a ton about it in a very short period of time. And one of the things that was really difficult for us immediately that a lot of people in the allergy community have is how do you eat out and how do you go to restaurants and eat safely and how do you go to fairs and festivals and all of these things. So that was 2021. By 2023, we were like, we have to do something about this. There's not a lot in Buffalo that services fairs and festivals in the mobile food scene. So that's how we got started. We actually launched in 2023 the Erie County Fair. So we had a fair food stand for 2 years. And then just this year, we decided to invest and start up in a food truck as well. So my wife with celiac disease, we started a food truck called The Silly Yak.
All right.
So a little bit of a play on celiac.
I get why it needs the explanation.
Yes, needs the explanation. But that is our food truck. And again, we're excited to be able to kind of serve that allergy community. But again, I always like to, as much as possible, tie it back to academia. I talk about the starting of my business in all of the classes that I teach, right? These are the real problems that I'm facing. And it's actually been fun. I teach a class in strategic management. And so many of the problems that our business faces are things that I can point to lecture slides and say, I deal with this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Supply chain, right? Talk about supply chain and complexities of that. And I talk about the complexities in our business. So I think it allows me to provide that real world experience in the classroom.
All right.
Awesome.
So to conclude, what's your advice to business owners that want to take advantage of the services, or who's right for you, or anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, my first advice would be to not be afraid to reach out to any of us. And the reason why I said that is to second one of Mike's point earlier about how in the school management, we are so interconnected that if we couldn't think of, immediately the answer to the questions, we can definitely point to other resources around, but we definitely do not want to leave anybody hanging with an unanswered question. So I think just the interconnections and the relationships that all of us have in the school management together with CELs, we always going to be able to point you in the right direction. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Excellent. I don't think people think, oh, I'll call the university when they have a problem.
No problem. Let me call.
You can. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael and Cassie, for breaking down the Projects Clinic and for showing how the UB School of Management is a real force for small business support, not just in theory, but in action. That's what we at CEL love. So whether you're a solopreneur looking for a fresh eyes on a problem or a growing company in need of strategic insights, partnering with the university might just be the smartest move you haven't made yet. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with another business owner who might benefit from hearing about it. I'm Susan Steffen, and this has been the Incorporate podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep connecting, and remember, help is closer than you might think. Thank you.